Welcome to another edition of Feng Shui of Spreadsheets. Uh, our, our objective when we talk about Feng Shui of Spreadsheets is to help with collaboration by providing better communication, which really means that we document things so people can understand what's going on. It also helps us prepare the spreadsheet or build it. These are stepping stones, I guess, to better preparing, better formatting of the spreadsheet. So it's easier to put the thing together and to troubleshoot it. Now, Feng Shui, of course, is, as you can read here, is the placement and arrangement of space to achieve harmony with the environment. I remember talking to a lawyer who worked with one of the casinos in Las Vegas, and we were on a plane together and sitting next to each other, and he was telling me about some what they call them whales in Las Vegas. These are folks who will bet a lot of money, and they will a lot of times give them comps, which is just a complimentary room or other kinds of things. And in this case, some Chinese came over from mainland China and were going to had the reputation of spending a lot of money at the casino, and so the casino comped them a room or suite, and in addition, they had their people in there moving the furniture around for proper feng shui. So they're serious about this. Now, there are 5 rules and 5 essential best practices for feng shui. The first is think about workbooks and not worksheets. What that means really is that you will have multiple worksheets in one workbook that are all hooked together. And you can pull, of course, data from one worksheet to another worksheet and use it there. And if you don't know how to do that, I'll be happy to talk about that. The second is the worksheet needs a brain, so the variables and parameters are in a central location. We did that on the very first spreadsheet, the one with a hybrid car. So you've seen that before, but that ought to happen everywhere. The third one is that you design the workbook layout with users in mind, which means that think about people who are going to use this thing and make it easy for them to make changes in parameters or so forth. Which is why we want the brain, but frankly, it makes it easier for everyone. Document the worksheet. You can put little comments in. Or text, and provide some sort of navigation. Sometimes that's just naming the worksheets properly. Other times you can put links to various worksheets as appropriate. Now, the 5 rules are, these go along in parallel with the 5 principles. The first one is to separate the inputs, calculations, and results. Inputs are parameters, and we want those separate from the calculations. For example, on the grandpa problem with cola, the 2% increase ought to be separate from the calculations. That means you should not put the 2% itself in the calculation. You would refer rather to a cell that had the 2%. And then if grandpa thought, well, really 2% is not right, and 2.5% is correct, all you have to do is change the one cell from 2% to 2.5%, and you got it. The second is use one formula per row or column. If you use more than that, it gets confusing. The second or third one is that because of the way that we read, and the assumptions we make because of the way we read, which is we read from left to right and from top to bottom, then when you refer to something, then you want to refer to the left and above. And for example, you might decide you're going to put your parameters in a block up on the upper left-hand corner of the spreadsheet. And that would be a good example of Rule 3. Rule 4 means to use multiple worksheets where appropriate. There's no reason to put everything on one. Some people argue that you should have one computer screen one computer screen should be the size of a spreadsheet. If you need more room than that, then you need to have multiple worksheets. Some of us have huge big monitors, and so that makes it difficult for those folks with smaller monitors, but that's a whole other topic. And the fifth rule is to use each column for the same purpose, at least on the spreadsheet. Okay. And what that means is it should be, if you're doing a business model for a company, then you would put time across the columns. So you use, quarter 1, quarter 2, quarter 3, quarter 4, and then the next year, quarter 1, 2, 3, 4. But you wouldn't have that on one sheet and then go to another sheet and have the quarters in rows rather than columns. It's just confusing, so we don't want to do that. Now, we're gonna look at a workbook here briefly, and we have 5 best practices or principles and 5 rules. And so, what's right, what's wrong, and what changes would you suggest? So here's the first sheet of it, and you can see here that we have sales revenue, which is $3.5 million times 5, and that's all in a one cell. And then the cost of goods sold expenses are 60% of that, so that's in the second cell. And you can see that they just, here, because we're looking at this in formula view, we can see the different formulas in there. And when we look at the spreadsheet itself, then we have these numbers, but we really don't have any idea where they came from. And if our cost of goods sold expense wasn't 60%, but was really 59%, you have to go to that cell and edit that cell to make that change, which is not a good thing. We would rather see that as a parameter. Okay. So this was a poorly constructed workbook, and it's confusing. It's not user-friendly. There's no good documentation in it. There's no assumptions. Or no documentation of the assumptions and so forth. So what should we do? Well, first, we talked earlier about having navigation. And so here's a table of contents which tells the 5 different, 5 different sheets in the workbook. Okay, and you can see here that there's a yellow box with some notes about the particular spreadsheet, and then when we go to the brain here is where we put our parameters in, and we talk about the sales volume, the average selling price, cost of goods sold, and so forth. So there are really all of our numeric assumptions are here. Again, that's like the numbers that we were using in the hybrid car. And then when we go to calculate, then or our analysis here, then we have separated our calculations from our data. And here we can see a cell, it's named after Hector Guerrero here, which talks about, which documents that particular cell and why the net income is a negative $2.5 million. Here's a third one where this particular thing, they've done a Monte Carlo simulation and keeps track of the simulations of the profit and loss statement. And then the last one here is a graph of the, gives you the idea of the risk profile or the probability that you'd achieve a certain result. So that's a much better organized spreadsheet and much easier to follow. So the two things here. First, unless it's a throwaway deal, then spend the time and effort to make it right. And the second thing is apply the 5 best practices and 5 rules, because you'll get a better spreadsheet in the end. So I hope you find that useful, and we'll see you in class.